Okay, so I want to preface this video with a bit of a disclaimer that this is not going to be like my last 3 Deltarune videos. Those ones were very evidence-based and they were just about trying to figure out what has already happened in the story so far, and this video is going to be me trying to predict what is going to happen in the rest of the game. And these predictions are going to be educated guesses based on the theories I have already made and other stuff that's in the game. And I really want to emphasize that these are just guesses. Take everything I'm going to say with a grain of salt. I am very much just throwing it at the wall and then coming back a year or two later and seeing if anything stuck. So treat what I'm going to say as more of fun what ifs than a hard concrete theory. And with that out of the way, let's get into it, starting of course with... So we already know a lot about Chapter 3, right? It's TV themed and the chapter boss should be the TV itself, and they're probably named Tenna. So I'm just going to jump ahead to the good part, which is the secret boss. So what are the traits that Spamton and Jevil both share? They are both gastropelled and they are both items that are usually discarded. And so I'm going to make the assumption that this is a pattern and that all of the secret bosses are going to be like this. So I think the super boss for Chapter 3 is going to be the main character from a TV show whose show was cancelled before it could get a proper ending, basically leaving the show on a cliffhanger. And I think that it's going to be a cowboy show, and I think that the cowboy's name is Mike. Okay, so I know that's not the most original theory, but hear me out. Spamton made it big by selling stuff related to Mike's show. And when the show got canned, Spamton lost his cash cow, and he blames Tenna for canceling the show. And I think the boss is going to use the Green Soul mode. Now, as for the rest of the chapter, I think it's mostly going to be about giving development to Chris's family, and I think Rousey will get some character development in this chapter, but his character arc won't be complete. Okay, so I think that Chapter 4 is going to be in the church, but I don't think it's going to be based on the church. So we know from what we've seen so far of Chapter 3 that a Dark World can be mostly based on a single item. From what we've seen, it seems that Chapter 3 is going to be about 90% TV, 10% Chris's house. And so far, all of the Dark Worlds have had an entertainment theme to them. Chapter 1 is cards and board games, Chapter 2 internet and computers, Chapter 3 is TV. I think escapism, entertainment, fiction, and the creation of it are gonna be major themes in the game. And so with this idea in mind, I think that Chapter 4 is going to be based on literature. Specifically, high fantasy novels, even more specifically, The Lord of the Hammer. And the Chapter 4 boss is going to be none other than Gerson's very own self-insert OC, the titular Lord of the Hammer. Jaru will brag about how he guessed it right, even though it's not really what he guessed, but you know it's close, so I guess we can give it to him. Now, within this thought, I think there's a lot of different ways for this to play out, especially depending on who is in the Dark World with us. I think Noelle has a strong likelihood of being in this chapter, and I think if Caddy and Joggington are going to be in a Dark World, it would be this one. And I could be here all day listing off all the possible ways this could play out, but that would take all day, so figure it out on your own time. What I do think for sure is going to happen is that Rousey is going to go through his full character arc in this chapter. The last 2 before this have been building it up, and in Chapter 4 it's going to go over that hump. Which is why I think the Lord of the Hammer idea is cool, because the idea of the boss being Gerson's self-insert has a lot of potential to parallel Rousey's character. Now, as for how Rousey's character will end up, well, I can see it going one of 2 ways. So how I interpret Rousey is that he is a Pinocchio plot, and that there are 2 possible endings for Rousey's character. 1, Rousey gets to be a real boy, basically he becomes a Lightner somehow. Keep in mind the prophecy only says a prince from the dark, not that they have to be a Darkener. As for the other alternative, Rousey will be forced to accept himself for who he is, and his fate. This one would probably be sad, and Rousey likely doesn't live past the credits in this version. As for the secret boss, I have no idea, but I think they're going to be using the Cyan Soul mode, which of course is new. I don't know what it would play like, but if it's not Cyan, then it would be orange instead. So I think after the events of Chapter 4, Noelle will realize, if she hasn't already, that the Dark Worlds are real, And what I think she will decide to do with this information is that she will make the Chapter 5 Dark World. Specifically, she will make the Dark World in the hospital to try and save her dying father with magic. Now, I think this plan will not work in the normal route. However, I think it will work if you did Snowgrave. And I think the Dark World is going to be based off of her Dragon Blazers video game and will be focused on the ice level she's stuck on. The chapter boss will be the boss she is stuck on, and the secret boss will be the wizard that left the party. And they're going to use the blue soul mode. However, I could also see it where the chapter boss is actually the main party of Dragon Blazers, and the enemies they are fighting are framed as the good guys instead. This will be the chapter where most of Chris's plan is revealed, if it hasn't already been revealed. Specifically, just the stuff that Rousey is in on, but not the stuff that is relevant to Gaster. That will be explained in Chapter 6. It's also possible that Noelle's mom will be in the Dark World in this chapter. And at some point in the chapter, probably after the Dark World adventure, there's going to be a part where you have to go and get the key to the bunker from Noelle's mom. The chapter will end with everyone walking into the bunker, which I think will already have a Dark World in it. If there isn't one, then they will walk in and make one. So yeah, I think the bunker is going to be Chapter 6. With how Gaster is connected to the bunker and how Gaster is connected with the number 6, it feels right, and any mystery in the story that hasn't been answered yet will be answered in Chapter 6. As for whether or not Gaster will actually appear, I'm gonna go with it would be really lame if he didn't. He may or may not be the chapter boss though. As for the secret boss, I think it's going to be the discarded vessel. It lines up with the discarded trend, and it feels like the right amount of importance for it. It's not too important of a role, but it's not too unimportant as well. And I think it's going to use the purple soul mode. Now, as for Des, I could see it going one of two ways. I think she's either going to be a damsel in distress, or she's going to get fridged. So let me explain for anyone who doesn't speak TV tropes. She's either trapped somewhere and Chris is trying to save her, or she's dead and the only reason she exists in the story at all is to die and make Noelle sad. And I think if Des is dead, then Noelle would be the one that killed her. Now, I know that this is not an original theory, but I think it makes sense. Think about it like this. We know that Noelle has the ability to kill people and then immediately forget about it. She killed that AdSense, blacked out when doing it, and then immediately convinced herself that she didn't kill him, that he's still alive, and that he gave her the ring and left. But I also want to restate that I feel 50-50 on Des being alive or dead. Okay, so after the events of Chapter 6, I think either Noelle or Gaster, but probably Noelle, will go and make a dark fountain in the middle of town. Now, because the Dark World was open outside, it will continue to grow indefinitely until it covers the whole world, and once it does, the roaring will happen. Now, I don't think the roaring will actually happen, but I think the threat of the roaring will be acknowledged to give more urgency and stakes to the climax of the story. Now keep in mind, the festival will have definitely started at this point, so the Dark World will be based on the festival, but I also think there's a good chance that it will also be based on the previous Dark Worlds as well. The secret boss for this chapter will be Sham. You can fight him if you've beaten all the other super bosses. Beating him will get you the Pure Crystal, which you can use to make the Twisted Sword if you did Snowgrave, which will probably unlock something, maybe another boss or a secret ending, something cool. Now, for the final boss, I think that Noelle is going to beat the shit out of Chris, rip the soul right out of their chest, absorb it, and become the Angel's Heaven. At which point, we will now be playing as Noelle as we fight the party as the final boss. And what we choose to do as Noelle will decide the ending. Now, there's a lot of different ways this could play out, but I think most of what you can do will get you a game over type ending. But what I think will happen is that you have to lose intentionally somehow, and then Noelle will be dying in Susie's arms, and Noelle is going to say, "Susie, you're a hot piece of work," and then die. Then the soul will seal the fountain on its own, and the game will end. Thank you for watching my video all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, it would mean a lot to me if you'd like and subscribe. I got more videos on the way, both Deltarune related and non-Deltarune content, so make sure to subscribe for that. Also, one more thing I forgot to talk about in the video. I think we are going to get a scene in Chapter 3 where Susie is gonna turn into like Susiezilla or something and then like fight an Ultraman parody. That's definitely happening 100%.